Welcome to MindCast, brought to you by Stryve. We talk to experts from all walks of life and discover their secrets that will allow you to unlock your potential and live the successful, fulfilled life that we all strive for. Our guest today is a self-taught writer focused on telling stories that help you live a better life. His work reaches over 300,000 people each month across various platforms like Medium, Quora, his own blog, and a website called 4 Minute Books, where he's published over 450 book summaries to date. Please welcome our returning guest, Niklas Göke. On today's podcast, we speak about how embracing the feeling of vulnerability can actually help us develop as a person. Nick explains what the philosophy of Stoicism is and the value of it, and we also hear his solution to the crisis young people today are facing. So recently there's been a huge shift towards mindfulness and self-awareness, with companies such as Headspace, Mindvalley and Calm at the forefront. However, many young people are still avoiding it, which I think is down to them not wanting to feel vulnerable because they feel mindfulness will expose all their flaws. You've written that vulnerability isn't just the source of grief, pain and sorrow. It's also the source of love, joy and creation. Why is it so important to accept and embrace vulnerability in order to self-improve?
Vulnerability helps you realize that the world will keep on turning even if things go wrong. So the only way you can, because many of the things we do, like the smartphones and so on, is just to get reassurance. So we want people telling us like, this is going to be okay. Everything's going to turn out okay. Your career is going to turn out okay. Your love life is going to turn out okay, and so on and so on. And the problem is, if you get all these reassurance all the time, you have no real incentive to take on any risk. Okay, that's you shy away from the risk, but the risk is always there. You have to take it if you actually want those things. So if you want a great relationship, at some point you're going to have to step up to someone and say, I want to be with you. And that's hard because that puts you in a vulnerable spot because they might say no. But in the end, even if that happens, you'll still be okay. You'll realize life goes on. Oh, I'm still here. So nothing bad happened. So vulnerability is like, it's stepping forward and like taking the risk to actually get the things you constantly get reassurance from the world that you will get. So to actually get them, you have to open yourself up and just expose yourself, basically. But at the same time, when you do that, you don't just have the option of getting a lot more out of life, but you also have when the downside happens, which is you don't get what you want and you actually get hurt, you see that the world keeps on turning. So this kind of having these real experiences where you say, I'm going to do something first, I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to risk it. And when you do that, you basically give yourself the best reassurance there is, which is just reality. So even if something goes wrong, most of the time, nothing all that bad happens and life goes on. And that goes right back into all these like fundamental skills and self-awareness and so on, where you realize, oh, wow, it's not all that bad. And vulnerability has the power to help you do that.
So then how do we embrace this vulnerability? Because from a very young age, we're all brought up in a society where the majority, if not all of our life is encompassed by education. But education is an incredibly controlled environment where we aren't exposed to external shocks that can shake us. And there are no genuine life consequences. In essence, it's a bubble waiting to burst. So how do we create these experiences where we can take on vulnerability and challenge our comfort environments?
I would say the easiest way you can think of it, or the easiest question you can ask yourself if you say, okay, I want to make this step outside my comfort zone, I want to do something that makes me vulnerable, is to ask, where can I take on responsibility that no one gave to me? So as a career example, we just tried to find a job for my sister's boyfriend, okay? And he wanted to work at a marketing agency. So locally, we had like 20 places that were our options because it had to be in the area. So And what we did was, instead of writing a normal cover letter and sending the standard application that you would send somewhere, what we did is we made a website, because marketing agencies make websites. So basically, we took the responsibility of saying, you know what, we're not just going to apply to this job, we're actually going to do the job. We're going to do what this job requires of us, which is, in one example, making a website. So we made this digital sort of CV and had the website, sent that out to 5 places. And I think he immediately got an internship within the next couple of days, because people were like, wow, he took the responsibility of doing the work and he just did it. He didn't ask, he just did it. So, and you can transfer that to a lot of places where you can say, I'm going to take the responsibility of this relationship upon myself to try and do something great. And so you might throw a surprise party for a friend and, maybe they won't like it or something like that. So just try to find something where you can take responsibility and see something through. And with that is automatically going to come vulnerability and all the great things that follow from it.
So then would you put that all down to us as a generation being more proactive about everything and taking responsibility for our own lives and stop blaming the world around us?
Yeah, for sure. So doing things is the game. And basically, when you're in a system, all these autopilot systems like education, higher education, where you're on some track and you get a list of things you're supposed to do and check, always sort of doubt that system and ask, what else can I do here? What can I do? What can I start? Where can I take the initiative? And just start doing things on your own.
So then, all the decisions you make and actions you carry out are driven by your mind. And not enough people in our generation, in fact, very few are actually proactive about the development of their minds. So how can we become more curious to learn about and understand our minds?
I'm not sure what it triggers in terms of wanting to find out more about that. I think we all have different experiences and, maybe your brother is journaling and somehow you get into it. So you have to kind of find that gateway into all this self-improvement stuff. And I'm not sure what experience is going to do that for you, but doing things will definitely start that process, because just when you go out of the usual that you read a book you wouldn't consider it normally, or you take a friend's advice that's kind of strange, and all these things. That's how you start. That's how you look outside of what you already know. And that's, I think, where you can find that gateway into, actually, like, my mind and how it works, it has a lot to do with this stuff. So let me find out more about it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more there. I want to move on to something else that you've mentioned in your articles. It's getting a lot of traction in society today. It's a particular life philosophy called Stoicism, which you've claimed has greatly improved your life. Could you give us insight into what Stoicism is about and how it helped you?
Sure. So I learned about this. I learned a lot about this from Horion Holiday, who does what you nicely said earlier that I was doing with the whole technology and awareness movement. He's basically translating Stoicism for modern day times. Okay, so he's repackaging it. He has new stories with it, and that just makes it easier to access for people in our generation. And Stoicism is really just this ancient philosophy that at its core is about learning to separate what you can and what you can't control. So for everything, every action that you do, every behavior, everything that happens in your life, you can look at it and ask, do I control this or do I not control this? And if there's something I control here, what is it? And then focusing only on the aspects that you control and not worrying about anything else. So it's really kind of a mindfulness thing where you have to develop a sort of awareness once again, but at the same time, once you have it, it just gives you a feeling of peace. Because if you realize something is outside your control and you're not worried about doing anything about it because you can't influence it anyway, that just makes you feel at ease and calm, and it just allows you to make a lot better decisions. So that's what Stoicism is about at its core, basically.
Yeah, it completely makes sense, right? If you think about it, why put your focus and effort on something that's not within your control at all? It makes no sense. But I think the sad thing is when you kind of package these teachings into something and you say it's an ancient philosophy, young people for some reason just switch off. So it's great to see something like Stoicism, which has been practiced for thousands of years, actually kicking off in modern day society with a large following of young millennials today. So one of my favorite articles of yours is titled "Dear Millennials, a Letter to the Lost Generation." And there's a very powerful extract that I would like to read out. It's quite long, but I think it has a lot of relevance to what we've discussed today. In my opinion, it perfectly kind of captures the crisis that our generation is facing. So we're called the Peter Pans, the snowflakes, the generation confused of the new millennium. These calls echo from our parents and our grandparents, and the worst thing about them is they're right. We're too childish with our money, we're too soft with our work, and we're scared stiff with our relationships. I can't help but wonder, what happened to patience, to responsibility, to commitment? What happened to vision, to trust, to gratitude, to work ethic, to maturity, to self-awareness and acceptance? We're told we can have everything, be everything, and do everything we want, and we want to believe it so badly we've stopped questioning it. The truth we share with our ancestors is an uncomfortable one. We can't. Even we can't. We have more opportunities than our parents, grandparents, or any generation ever before us, yet we linger in a state of paralysis by analysis, squandering those gifts, ending up months later having done, been, and owning nothing at all. But who to turn to in times of frustration, depression, and sadness? I think I know. So what exactly do you think the solution to this crisis is?
So, as you just read that back to me, I think that what's at the core of this statement is that the reward we get for taking on risk that has disproportionately risen in the past, let's say, past few decades. So what we talked about before with vulnerability and going out of your way to do something and taking the initiative, the rewards for that, they have gotten bigger, or at the very least, the amount of risk we have to take on has gotten lower, because the cost of publishing a book is next to nothing these days. You can put it online for free. It costs almost nothing. And 400 years ago, you had to find someone who could even help you print all that and pay for all the paper and so on. So the amount of risk is going down in relation to the rewards that we can get. And I think the crisis that we have then, if it's easier than ever to do all these things and like be vulnerable and take responsibility, and the reward is so much greater, then why aren't we doing it? And I think one big thing is that we're paralyzed because we have all these options. Okay, so the downside is that we're kind of aware that life is really good and we can have and do and be all these amazing things, but then it really gets hard to decide, and we get paralyzed with that. And so we sort of spin in circles where we end up, a lot of the time, at least for a long time, not doing much at all. And so I think the best place to start is to just start with one small thing. Like, take one thing you really care about, where you really, maybe you're angry that you didn't do this, or you wish you would have done this a long time ago, and go with that thing and take responsibility for that. So start small, start with one little thing, make one little step, and the rest is going to follow from there.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, I think what I kind of take away from that, from what you said, is that don't take things for granted and make yourself accountable for your decisions. Really take responsibility. Nick, thanks for coming back on the podcast and continuing the conversation from last time. It's been great having you and great chatting again.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Make sure you check out Nick on Medium and head on over to his website, where you can dig deeper into the topics we spoke about today. The links will be in the description below. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Follow us on social media and be sure to subscribe and stay updated on our weekly podcast, where you can get life-changing advice from experts in all walks of life to unlock your mind.